This light system brighter? Is the light system brighter? Okay. It's 6:02. We'll go ahead and call to the June 18th special meeting of the Weld RA5J Board of Education to order. If you would take a moment to silence your cell phones and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Diagano, would you please call roll?
Monica Johnson, here. Amanda Proctor is excused. Nate Tisano.
Here.
Amy Musgrave, here. Michael Wales.
I'm here.
Annabelle Resco, here. And Hayden Chambers is excused.
All right. I don't think we have any changes to this evening's agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented. We have a motion by Vice President Sassano, second by Director Musgrave to approve the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And I don't think we have citizen comments on agenda items, but I will say it's confusing that this is listed as a special meeting, and that's because our calendar has it as a work session, and so because of that, we had to call it a special meeting. So it really is just kind of a regular.
Yeah.
It's a special regular meeting. Do we have any staff and student celebrations?
You know, I don't have a lot tonight. The one thing I want to celebrate tonight, I think it's pretty powerful, and it's nice to do this when JJ's in the room. Can relay this back to his staff. But I think one of the things that's powerful is how much we drive to get students to and from school. And a stat I just want to share with you is, and this is just for our special education students, we drove over 90,000 miles this year with no accidents. So I think that's a testament to the program. JJ, you may know better, but it's over 300,000 miles total.
It's over 300,000 with all transportation included.
Yeah, so we drive a ton, but when I heard the 90,000 miles for special education without accident-free or whatever, that's amazing when you think about it. It truly is powerful to see that success.
So the underlying question is, are you guys manipulating that figure? So was it at 91,000 miles that you actually had the accident?
No. I don't knock on wood.
All right. Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Any other celebrations or recognitions? We can move on to board reports if there are any.
I can give mine.
Okay.
So, I've still been surprisingly busy considering the fact that it's summer. So, I was watching our Roosevelt FFA went down to their state convention and they did phenomenal. We had a dairy judging team and a bunch of individuals placed and received really, really great honors. So, it was really cool to see that program under the guidance of Zudiga really thriving, and it's kind of our little partner in CTSO. So that was a lot of fun. This last week I was down at FBLA state officer training as well as Colorado CTSO training. So I was connecting with our officer POSA, TSA, FBLA, FFA, you name all of those career technical student organizations, and we were really connecting, seeing what we can do to improve the reach of CTE and making sure that our FBLA program is phased out. I've also been meeting with my CASB on Student Leadership Academy Plan team. We've been getting a lot in the works that will be exciting and be a lot of fun to execute as we reach December with our CASB student portion. And last but not least, we're down at FBLA Nationals this next week, so that's really exciting. We had our parent meeting, and everyone's ready to go, ready to compete, so that should be a lot of fun.
Okay. Amy, do you have any?
I do not have anything.
Nate?
I don't think think I have anything either. It's summertime.
I know. I'd like to report that Annabelle is overachieving during the summer. Yeah, I'm not surprised at that at all. But yeah, I don't have anything either to report. So we'll rely on all of her knowledge of all of the state competitions that are going to happening soon. So yeah, I don't have anything.
Annabelle, I was going to ask you for the state officer training. So are you taking on a new role or will
Yeah,
you?
so I'm representing District 1 FBLA this year, so that's including us, Fort Collins, Greeley schools, Berlin, pretty much everything within this like centralized northern Colorado region. So I'm getting to oversee that as well as be on that team again. So we're serving on different committees, basically working on things such as middle school involvement and development of community service programs. So that's really, really exciting. It was a really great week.
Awesome. I don't have anything either. I'm trying to take summer vacation myself. So let's move on to the report from superintendent's office.
I don't have a lot. I just want to report, I had, as part of Rotary in town, they had a regional convention last weekend, so Thursday afternoon or evening, Friday all day, Saturday all day. I got more exposure to Rotary and what's going on in the region. And just how impactful, as I listened to other people, how impactful the Rotary in town is around students, how focused that group in town is around supporting students from our district. And I think it's powerful to see. The mission across the board is pretty cool, but ours in town, when you get to hear everyone else's, is really focused on student success, which is pretty neat. So.
Okay. Other comments, questions? Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda. As you know, our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval by a single motion. Most of the items listed on the consent agenda have gone through board review and recommendation. Documentation concerning items has been provided to all board members and the public in advance to assure an extensive and thorough review. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Director Johnson, a second by Vice President Sassano to accept the consent agenda as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We'll move on to our first item of old business, which is the adoption of the proposed budget for 2025-2026. Mr. Everest.
Thank you, President Wales, members of the Board of Education, and Superintendent Nielsen. First item for me tonight is approval of the proposed budget. We went over the proposed budget for the 2025-26 school year at our last meeting on June 4th. District administration is requesting approval of the Weld County District 5K proposed budget for 25-26. This concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, so give me a second here. So we have a member of the community who would like to make a comment on an agenda item. I know we're already past that point, but we technically haven't got into any of our agenda items at this moment, so I'm going to go and allow it. I'm assuming it's Ms. Hollywood?
Yes.
Okay, if you step forward, Jess, can you give me a 3-minute?
So I did go ahead and prepare something so that I can make sure I fit all of this in. Okay. Should I go ahead and start? Okay. My name is Leslie Hollywood, and I have 2 students in this district plus 1 graduate. I'm asking you to approve the new teacher and staff salary proposal. We have some phenomenal teachers in this district who have been fundamental in the success of my children. I appreciate them. I know finding money in our budget for teacher pay increases can be difficult, so I would like to emphasize how important fiscal responsibility is and encourage this board and district to be better stewards of our money. I recently did 2 open record requests on one expense in particular, one of the new district websites. I didn't think I was going to love what I found, as it was clear it was an issue, but I was stunned by what I found.
So that's not an agenda item. If you want to talk about the teacher piece, that's fine, but
I think it is an agenda item. I guess I would disagree with you because I'm breaking down how this covers the increase in teacher salaries. Most glaring, the district had hired a small vendor and was paying them $8,000 a month or $96,000 a year. I want to make clear this is 4 times what a qualified competitor would have charged, 4 times. The district broke its own policy multiple times in hiring this vendor. They did not put the job out for bids or quotes. The job was given to an individual that somebody knew. There was no signed or dated contract for phase 1 of the job. There was just a payment. The board never voted on this expense. Next, phase 1 was not completed, yet the district entered into a contract for $8,000 a month with this vendor and paid it. I have the payment records. The board did not vote on this new contract, a $96,000 a year expense, almost double the base teacher salary being voted tonight, and again, 4 times what a qualified competitor would have charged. We could have hired a whole new teacher, but we were paying the website vendor. We could have hired 3 paraprofessionals. It then became clear the vendor who had been hired was unqualified, and that contract was terminated, and a new vendor was hired at $25,000 a year. This is much more reasonable, but it's the highest that was quoted, because I did go through all the quotes. But even when hiring the replacement vendor, you still broke board policy. It should have gone out to a per your own policy. It should have gone to a board vote per your own policy. And the fact that you would have continued to pay the first vendor 4 times market rate had the job been being adequately completed is a huge red flag. Who approved this? How did it get approved? How can we be better stewards of our money so we can pay our teachers more, even more than what you're to approve tonight? The last board meeting, you voted to change the bidding policy, increasing what is required to receive bids from $10,000 to $100,000. And the incredibly concerning waste and cronyism I just mentioned was excused by this board as normal. That is super alarming as a parent and a citizen of this community. Also, I was tipped off to look into this expense because conversations were overheard between certain people in the administration giving it to a favored vendor. This is also a violation of your board policy. All in all, this district broke policy 6 times.
Hollywood, your time is up.
Expense. How is this happening, and how can we be better stewards of our money and help our teachers more?
Thank you for your comments. So we'll return back to old business. Our first item is the adoption of the proposed budget. Mr. Evers, would you mind reintroducing?
Sure. The district administration is asking for Board of Education approval of the proposed budget for the 25-26 school year. The details of it were presented at our June 4th meeting. That's really all I have on this particular item, and I can answer any questions for it.
Mr. Evers, has everything been changed or adjusted in any sense since our June 4th meeting, or is it all the same?
No, it's exactly the same.
Perfect.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Is there a legal requirement to motion exactly as it's presented in here?
If you wouldn't mind, Vice President Sasano.
Okay. That's the part. Okay. Be it resolved by the Board of Education of Weld County School District RE5J in Weld and Larimer counties that the amounts shown in the following schedule be appropriated to each fund as specified in the supplemental budget for the ensuing fiscal year beginning July 1, 2025 and ending June 30, 2026.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Vice President Sasano, a second by Director Johnson to a resolution to approve the supplemental budget for 25-2026. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Diagano, would you please pull the board?
Thomas Johnson?
Yes.
Vicky Lozano?
Yes.
Amy Griggs? Michael Wales?
Yes. Our next item of old business is the Food Service Management Company Committee selection. Mr. Everest.
Thank you again, President Wales. Sorry, let me get this up for us. So, Food Service Management Company RFP selection. The selection of Food Service Management Company. And just from the part of the federal statute, awards will be made to the responsible firm whose proposal is the most advantageous to the program, with price and other factors considered. The district selection committee chose the extensive option from Sodexo. Per requirements of the National School Lunch Program, district administration is seek board approval of the contract with Sodexo. Food Service Management Company contracts be put out for RFP every 5 years. Contract renewals can occur every year for a maximum of 5 years. And then we have just a breakdown of what the price proposals were for this year. And then really most of this is just a recap of what I did, what was presented at our last meeting. So this concludes the presentation, and I can answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions? I do have a handful, and these are the questions that I submitted to you earlier. If you stay on this slide here, so the scoring rubric stated that price had to be the primary consideration. And I haven't double checked on this particular graphic here, but what was in the packet that you sent to the board, the way this should break down, if you were to total each column, the way this should break down is FE.
I'm sorry for interrupting, President Wales. The weighting of the different breakfast, lunch, snack, a la carte meal equivalency components, those aren't equally distributed in what we pay. By far the largest single component is lunch, and then followed by breakfast. And then the rest of the items are very small.
So that was, that was my assumption, was that we were selecting one of the meals as the primary selection. So I guess my question though, was that evident to the people scoring, and was that evident to the respondents to the RFP? That lunch was going to be the weighted. See, that light is going on and off.
It is.
Okay, not having a stroke. That light is. It's okay, but.
To the respondents of the RFP, it was not. The members of the committee discussed, looking at this information. It wasn't a part of the RFP that that lunch would be the primary driving factor.
Okay. And one of the other questions I had, at least on the meal pricing breakdown, was, so again, this was supposed to be the pricing was supposed to be the highest priority, with a maximum total of 20 points.
Yes.
On the scoring sheets, only 2 of the 4 gave it a perfect score of 20. And it's kind of a curiosity, because to me, that seems like a pretty objective metric, that low price gets high point. But it looked like, based on the way everything else was scored, it seemed rather subjective. So was there like a baseline or a national average or a state average that they were scoring it against?
No, there weren't any. There weren't any other measures that were used.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So again, with this graphic, it shows that Sodexo essentially submitted two separate bids.
Sodexo submitted one RFP that had two pricing options in it. The rest of their bid was identical. I mean, there wasn't another bid. They submitted one bid with two separate pricing options.
Okay, so, oh yeah, you're close with me on this. So again, we had four cards submitted, or four judges submit scoring. Of the four who submitted scoring, two of them only submitted one card for Sodexo. So they didn't break it apart as Sodexo 1 and Sodexo, but two of them did separate them as Sodexo 1 and Sodexo 2. Further, one of the evaluators scored the two bids just slightly different, and that was only in the competition category. So with Sodexo's two plans, it looked like one was they were going to pay employees considerably less, the other one was paying them considerably higher. On the one that they paid higher, that's where the score difference was different. But the other person who scored a separate card for Sodexo for each 1 and 2, theirs was exactly the same for both. And so when we get then to what you have on page 8 here with Sodexo having a score, I'm curious how we got to a total score for Sodexo without it being like Sodexo 1 and Sodexo 2. How? Because you had, like I said, you had people who scored them, apparently just combined it all into one and scored it, and then two people who separated them. So there seemed to be some discrepancy in that scoring.
I'm sorry, but what was your question?
How did that ultimately get calculated?
So, I mean, as you mentioned, not everyone broke out Sodexo.
So essentially you had 5 cards to score Sodexo with. So how did you account for the one extra actually?
So with the three that did not break them out separately, so those scores that was kind of the baseline, and the costing score was at how do I say this? So with those, the baseline, so basically the three that did not submit a separate scores, so that was kind of the base, and then the other two that did, those were added. I'm not explaining this well. 5 were submitted, 3 didn't break it out. The 3 that weren't broken out were, that was the baseline, and then the score for the costing was added in. That was basically the difference. I don't know.
Okay.
So I'm not explaining it well.
So that's and that becomes kind of a catching point for me, because at our last meeting we discussed signing on at our last meeting that we didn't have in hand yet. What contract were we going to sign?
Well, I mean, the option was for the Sodexo 1, the lower priced option.
It was for Sodexo for the lower price option?
Yes.
Okay. Another piece that is hard for me to kind of get over on this, though, is I guess Did our RFP process, did it explicitly allow for that type of bidding where you could, where a respondent could provide a bid?
I mean, it didn't explicitly allow or disallow for that type of thing. The bids get reviewed by CDE, and we asked specifically about that. And we were told by CDE that that type of thing is not unusual for multiple pricing options to be given in a single bid.
I mean, from my opinion only on that is that it seems odd that I know these names that, I don't know anything about Taylor, but I do know about SFE, I knew about Chartwell's, that, you know, they have nationwide, that they wouldn't adopt that same model.
I can only tell, I mean, this is the time I've been involved in this type of process, and the person we worked with at CDE that this is a part of their job said that it's not an unusual occurrence for a proposal to have multiple pricing options like this.
Okay. And the only other thing I was going to say is, and I may have tallied them wrong, but I went through multiple times and tallied them, but I don't think these numbers are exactly right. It doesn't change it doesn't change the order that they fall in, but I had Chartwell with actually 425 points, SFE with 388. Sodexo 1 actually has more points at 440, and Sodexo 2 has 438. But that was, so it says 437 here. That was the average. No, it wouldn't be the average. 438.5 would be the average if that were we were doing that. And Taylor, I have at 383. I don't know if that matters, if we need to update that, or we can go back through and check those, but we share that too. Thank you for answering my questions.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? We do have a motion. If there's no other questions, recommend a motion on this.
I will move to accept the recommendation of the RE5J Food Service Management Company Selection Committee as presented.
We have a motion by Director Johnson, a second by Vice President Sassano. Any further discussion?
So I guess that's not really even a question, just more of a statement about the process. And I said at our last meeting, I'm not going to be able to hide my disappointment that Sodexo came out on time. And I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I just don't think Sodexo, at least in our experience so far, has had the highest quality that they could. And I was hoping some of the other vendors might come out with a better quality product that would put them ahead of Sodexo. That didn't happen, or at least it appears it didn't happen. Okay. I wonder if our process didn't let quality come to the top as one of the factors in choosing one of these vendors. Last time you said it's a 5-year contract that we're signing with Sodexo? Is that true?
It's a little confusing. So it's a 5-year cycle for food service management companies. Every 5 years, you have to go out for an RFP for your food service management company. You essentially sign up for a year at a time with a particular food service management company. We're not signing a 5-year contract. This proposal kicks off the potential for a 5-year food service management company relationship. Each year we sign an addendum that signs us up for the following years. So it's basically 1 year time.
And added to that, I think, what I hear, right, is wondering whether the process we ran was the best process, the cleanest process. I think one of the things that we might want to consider as a board is having someone that's their job help us with the process. And, if you think about what Michael just said, that could be done as early as next year, right? So if we wanted to go through a process and bring someone from outside in that actually takes care of RFP processes, and can run it in a way that the board feels comfortable with, that might be something we should consider. And know, as Michael's talking about, we're not locked into a 5-year run.
So I guess that was my concern, is that we were locked into 5 years. Now, 5 years is the max, have to go out to bid at least every 5 years. If we want to go out to bid every year, we could do that.
We sure could.
I mean, I'm not recommending that necessarily, that's work, but we could do that. I guess I would suggest that we do something less than 5 years, a year, 2 years, and do maybe what you said and have somebody independent. I don't know if that's somebody BE or from another district or who that would be to come in and help us kind of lay that process out, because it's a lot of work. RFPs are a lot of work. My concern in that is I don't think anything's going to change price. Well, not much is going to change price-wise for these vendors, right? The cost of goods is not going to change a ton in a year unless we have another, COVID-style pandemic affect us. And just in experience working with the state and through several RFP processes, once a vendor loses an RFP, there's not a lot of interest in generally immediately applying for that again. So I wonder what kind of response, if we did it again next year, I wonder what kind of response we would get from the world, from the food vendor world. Again, I'm just putting concerns out there. And maybe we just need to Sodexo. If they end up being the one, maybe we just need to push them to provide better quality food.
And I think monitor it, right? And
Yes.
we pay attention and use student voice to help us with that.
So that's just a lot of random kind of vomiting, so I apologize for that. But I know, like I said, I know the process is challenging because of the time that's involved and because we have a small staff. We don't have someone to run an RFP process. That person would cost a lot of money. So we're asking our staff to do a lot of extra work to get that process done. But I do think it's something we need to look at sooner rather than later. Maybe in one of our work sessions early this fall, this is a topic we bring up. Whether we go with Sodexo or somebody else, this process needs to be locked in because we're going to have to do it again, at least in 5 years, but probably sooner than that. So I will hush.
Any other comments, discussion? All right, we do have a motion and a second. Ms. Diagano, would you please pull?
Michael Johnson,
Yes.
Lisa Swano,
Yes.
Amy Musgrave,
Michael Wales.
So the motion fails, which kind of puts us in an awkward situation. We can reconsider the question, which would require a motion.
Say that again, we can reconsider the question.
We can reconsider the question, but we would have to have somebody make a motion to reconsider the question. But I doubt that's gonna happen.
So, motion failed. We don't have a new vendor current. What happens? Do we just stick with, does our contract continue? Our current contract continue?
No, we need to sign a new agreement for this 5-year cycle. So,
Michael, is it by June 30th?
we need to have this to CDE by June 30th.
What are the ramifications if we don't, other than not having a vendor?
Honestly, I don't know. I would need to ask. As things stand right now, we won't have a food service management company as of first. I don't know if there's ramifications for us being, having a food service management company if we need to bring it in-house. I don't know, but we won't, right now, we won't have someone July 1st.
Maybe an answer to the board would be for staff to come up with an approach, and we've got to come up with a meeting probably sometime late next week to have an answer. I will just say, just from the staff's perspective, as I think about the decision and the option to move forward with Sodexo One for a year, we have a large number of what I would say are loyal food service workers in the community right now that are going to be in limbo. I think they already have talked a little bit about being in limbo as they don't know. So I have concerns about the loyalty they have had toward us, and how do we communicate with them as we move forward. I can get my head around do an RFP in the next year, but when I think about trying to move with continuity, having some plan to move forward with fall of 25, 26, I have some concerns around how to do that, right? Just as my brain is spinning right now around what's the right answer for the district. I do think we brought forward the most cost-effective option for it. It's essentially moving forward with the exact same contract we have with Sodexo currently. The only difference to this, as opposed to Nate, your idea of ending, was this would allow us to bring Civica on board, which I know helps Civica out. So when I think about the options we have, we come up with a plan in the next week. I just don't know what that plan is, other than, that's going to be a quick turnaround to try to do that by June 30th. So if we were just to openly say, we're going to discuss what a RFP looks like. I hear your question, Nate. Michael, we've talked about the same as, will we get other people who want to bid on our RFP? I believe we will. If we put an RFP and we find out that nobody will, then I'll eat crow. But that, I think, at least allows us as a district to move forward. Again, I think we're looking forward to doing this with the cheapest option we have on the table. And when at least we know can function in our community, and already as staff had talked about, whoever was selected being pushed in terms of how do we get the voice more involved than we have in the past. I think that needed to be true with any of these individuals or companies. So that can certainly be true with Sodexo, is how do we get student voice at the table, and monitor and discuss in a work session. I think all those things are practical. Feel like we can move forward as a district. I think not having a food service company moving forward puts the district at least behind the 8 ball. So that's just me expressing what's going on in my brain right now.
And it's, believe me, it's difficult for me to utter the what I have to utter at this point, but I don't have a motion to read for this question at this time. And so this issue is no longer for the board. I think that we do need to have a discussion though on how we move past this, because it's not the intention for, at least myself, to not have us without a food service provider, but, yeah, I'll just leave it at that, because, I mean, we're not reconsidering the question at this point. We'll move on to our next item, and that is special business. Our first item of special business is the approval of the Weld RE5J JMEA negotiated agreement. Dennis Nielsen.
Thanks, President Wales, board members. As you've been able to see in there, we've got a new master agreement with our certified staff. I think as you walk through and get a chance to see some of what we were able to accomplish this year, there were some language cleanup, I would say, but there also was, as we've talked about in our opportunities as a board to discuss a big shift in Article 8, plus more flexibility in terms of how we deal with fluctuations in size that I think was a challenge in previous agreements, and so that's a big change. I think there's some language that was brought in that some cleanup around staff safety that really dovetails off board policy, brought board policy much more into the language than was in this agreement before. Essentially mirrors what we have in our board policy. And then there was also some talk about how do we support some of our special needs staff members that are feeling stressed, and some of the opportunities that we have to support those teachers with some extra time during the day to do some of the work they have to do as special education teachers. So you can see in there around that. And then there was one section that I think ended up in an MOU, which was their request around how does our human resource department share information around the disciplinary action. And we held that over to the fall pending legal advice on what's best in terms of how we do that and how we make sure that that process for our HR department is clear to our teachers as they move through that type of disciplinary action, and what information has to be shared, what information shared only at the meeting. So that was some wondering on their part, and that for us happened to be at the last meeting we had, so we held that over. You can see that as an MOU. But otherwise, I think as we moved through it, as we got to language cleanup, we got to a pretty successful place with this current agreement. I'm happy to whatever questions you have.
Any questions?
I have a question on Article 8. If you don't mind just putting into very simple terms the changes that
Sure.
were made in Article 8.
Certainly. We had a pretty restrict Article 8 at the elementary level. There was discrepancies between elementary and secondary. The elementary, the way it's written was when a class size got over 24 students, the district must start the process to hire a teacher. The way that carried out is we ended up hiring, last year we ended up hiring 3 teachers based on the policy. And those 3 teachers were impactful for one student in 3 different grade levels or at 2 different schools. That's 3 different grade levels over 2 sites. And that ends up thinking about the ability we have to support teachers. That requirement was equivalent to over a 1% raise. And so we had that conversation in there today. I think that went into the agreement 2 or maybe 3 years ago. And it ties your hands as a district, right? You can't have the ability to move flexibly and pay attention to what's happening and what it looks like on the ground. In one of those situations, that teacher didn't even end up teaching the entire year because they weren't doing the great job. I mean, so I think it's important to have flexibility. I've been asking, talking with the board members since I got in this role to think about flexibility. So you can see now in Article 8, when that happens, now the first option is to look at a stipend for an individual teacher that's above the class that this district is deemed appropriate. And we've deemed appropriate employee agreement, 24 students in K3, 26 students in 4-5, and 20 students in a class at secondary. Secondary, other than it being by individual class, it's 28, and then we average for the 6 classes that they teach. At the elementary level, you have a class of 24, it's 4 all day long, so there is no averaging. So that's what's been in the agreement around class size expectations. We didn't address that this year, like we didn't say from the district, we've got to increase class size. However, we did talk in negotiations that class size directly impacts the amount of dollars that you can put in a raise. So those two things fight each other, right? A bigger class size means more money the teachers get paid. A smaller class size means that class costs more and you have less to put into the other class. So I think there's ongoing conversations around what options we have to support a reasonable class size, which is what happened here prior to me there, and prior to me joining the district. Those class sizes were landed on, and they're solid evidence. I think the state would say those class sizes make sense. There's not legislation that tells us we have to do that, but there's some logic to those sizes. I don't think the district pulled it out and they did it. But when you're a growing district and you're looking at individuals moving in, if your hands are tied and you have to add teachers all throughout the year, I think about how do we have the dollars to put towards teachers as we do that. So is that enough, Monica?
Yeah, I know we had talked about that extensively. And I like the flexibility for that very reason is we have our big strength and our biggest challenge right now is growth. And so I feel like with that growth comes, we have to remain flexible in a lot of circumstances across the district. And I think this one applies to that directly. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
You ready for a motion?
Yeah, if there's no, well, I entertain the motion.
So,
I thought you were going to motion.
well, I will, then discuss. Before I make that motion, I do have something I want to say. And I'll make the motion in a minute, and assuming that it's a second, I will vote for the motion. But before I do that, I want to address the agreement and talk about the process that got us here. And really what I want to do is address the staff. So this is mostly for those that are watching online or might be watching later. And what I want to say is we know how hard you all work. We know how unappreciated you can feel by parents and sometimes administrators, how much extra time, attention, and love you pour into your students and your career. We know, and we want to pay you as much as we can. But the simple fact is that we cannot pay teachers and staff enough. End of story. Work you do is too vital, too important, too valuable. We just simply can't pay teachers, paras, custodians, special needs staff, bus drivers, or lunchroom staff enough. You all should be making hundreds of thousands every year because the work you do is so vital. And we want to provide that to you, but we can't. We can't because we also have a responsibility to the taxpayers of this district who elected us to be fiscally prudent and work within the means that they have granted us. We've argued about that a lot lately. And the truth is you can't get blood from a turnip. Dollars only go so far and must meet all the priorities. When we first met about salaries, the administration told us that the budget, after meeting all of our financial obligations this year, would support a 1% raise. We We asked to beat the budget up to find enough for a step lane changes. They worked hard to do that, and I thank them for that. That was all in the works long before we had our meeting last month. It was packed with teachers and red accusing us of wanting to provide no raise and of not understanding how important their work is. This is a board of volunteers, a board of 5 individuals, all of whom have children in the district, and 2 of whom have spouses who work directly with students in the district. Of any board of education and teachers union to work with, this one has a full and complete understanding of what it is our staff does and how important their work is. But we can't negotiate in good faith when one party takes information shared in confidence, spreads it inaccurately. Never did this board suggest not giving any raise. This board and the administration were working hard to find the money for this salary package long before that, and the union representatives knew that. Rather than letting the process play out and trust the negotiations team to do their work in good faith, they chose to activate their membership and intimidate us into a decision. The fact that we are considering this compensation package this evening makes it look like we are doing that in response to our teachers union packing the room and reading assigned talking points to us. That's not the case. All of us need to understand that this package, while something I think we all want to do, comes at a cost. We won't be implementing a pretty desperately needed reading curriculum because of the cost of this salary package. We're not putting money aside for capital needs, and we're not going to be able to handle some of the preventative maintenance needs that make up this year. These are trade-offs that I think this board is temporarily willing to make because we understand the need for compensation for our staff. This type of decision is not sustainable, and we need to face that fact directly. We cannot continue to operate long-term by robbing Peter to pay Paul. All of that is to really say this. As we enter negotiations next year, I would encourage our union representatives to not make assumptions about this board, to not provide information to colleagues and friends that is not true, and to let the process fully play out before activating membership. This is a long process, sometimes a very long process, and much will change during it. We always encourage participation at board meetings. I want to make sure that participation from interested staff is constructive and based on truth. That meeting a few weeks ago was neither. Processes like these are often referred to as sausage making. Please let the sausage be made, or at least know what's going into it before complaining about how it tastes. This board, or at least this board member, is not one to take the conscience of our staff lightly and never will be. We will always work with you while working to meet our obligations. We must work together in good faith to make sure that what comes out of the negotiations process is something that meets all of those obligations and that everyone can be satisfied with. So with all of that said, I move to approve the negotiated agreement between Walmart, RJ, and the Johnstown Woodkins Education Association.
We have a motion by Vice President Sassano, a second by Director Musgrave to approve the master agreement with Sound Melican Education Association for the 25-26 year as presented. Any further discussion?
I do have discussion. As far as the negotiations went, I want to thank our teachers and just tell you how highly we all think of you collectively as a board. When we talk privately, when we talk openly, we all love and respect you, and I think that we have part of our teachers in our district, and we plan on continuing to do so. I certainly do. It made a huge difference. I thought you guys would be here tonight, so this is kind of weird, talking to an empty room. So you made a huge difference in the lives of my own children. I mean, I asked my children, you know, who their favorite teachers are, and they don't shut up. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And I mean, right now, my kids have people like Doyle and Frank and Herman, and, you know, I see them come to these meetings. I saw Herman and Frank at the last meeting, and I love and respect what they do for my kids and truly value them. And that being said, the intrusion of the CEA, which is what I felt it was, their activism at our board meeting, was really to push their own agenda, which they did across the state, and it did nothing to move our negotiations in one way or the other. All it did, I felt like, was destroy trust, which we had a good relationship with our local union members. I'd like to thank Scott, Jeremy, and Michael Everest for all of your hard work. I know it was tireless, your work on negotiations, and your role was played as it should be. You didn't speak for us, you didn't answer in our step. It would have been inappropriate. You were doing your role as you should. And that led to the rumors being spread that I'm rather offensive. I felt like you negotiated in good faith, and I truly appreciate your work. The CEA strong arms their membership. They really do a hard push on new teachers specifically. Part of that membership includes negotiation training, which is really becoming outdated in places like Colorado. Our neighboring states pay much higher than we do, and we have had to get creative with our mill levies and 4-day work weeks, things like that. And those are things we can do, and we don't need the CEA to do those. You don't learn about how to negotiate and pay them, $75 plus a month, $1 million in coverage, which I know you all think you need, but if you look down the road at your local broker, somebody like Pace, who's associated with AAE, costs $20 a month, and they'll give you $2 million in coverage. And you want to know why the CEA is expensive? It's because they mostly just push for legislation. They spend their money on lobbying and partisan lobbying, and I don't believe education should be partisan. They pour their money into Democrat candidates who support things that are really weird, that don't have anything to do with education. Like they oppose parental rights for abortion, nothing to do with education. This year, they pushed for legislation revoking parental rights and free speech. They peddled in illegal immigration. None of these things have to do with education funding and representing teachers. That's where your money goes, that's why your dues are high. What they didn't peddle in is things like legislation this year that ensured child rapists couldn't get off on just probation. That would protect kids. It had nothing to do with education, but with the problems we're having in our schools, they maybe peddle on that a bit. So our good teachers that are having to fight for their good name because of all the harm that's happening in school districts, maybe they could help those teachers out while they're helping children. So if you look on the CEA social media page, it's all a social agenda. It has nothing to do with education. I don't like them. I'm just saying that. I don't like them. I don't think they help our kids. When you look at Denver Public Schools, 60% of kids can't read or write, and they are union controlled. So my belief is the CEA is detrimental to kids and does not belong in the district. And I would like to hope that we can do our negotiations without their presence. And that's what I have to say about that.
Any other comments? I would echo, and I hope the actions of this board over the past 7 years that I've been out of it, I hope that those actions would have been enough to show and to build some trust in we are and where we want to go with our staff and what we want to provide for our staff. And so I'm a little disappointed in how things fell apart. And I'm not going to, I don't want to point any fingers because at this point I don't think that's going to benefit anybody. But I really do feel, as I've reflected over the last 3 or 4 weeks on that meeting and the energy surrounding it, and kind of the fallout within the community, as President Sassano said, you know, some of us have, well, all of us have pretty good connections with staff and students, and I got to say, it's been hard. It's been hard to be in places where staff is because something's changed. The energy has changed, the dynamic has changed, and that's disappointing. That's upsetting. I feel like instead of taking a step forward, taking a step forward in so many areas in the school district. So many areas. As somebody who, and you've heard me say this 1,000 times, as somebody who's graduated from the school district, to see where we have come, I feel like with respect to our relationship with our staff, and in particular with the local union, I feel like we've taken about a 6 or 7 step backwards. And I hope that's not the case. But it's definitely palpable. I am thankful that through this process, though, we were able to make some headway with Article 8. The way Article 8 was written, it is just not a sustainable solution for a problem like Director Johnson said, that is something that we're going to deal with. Growth is something we're going to deal with. Article 8, the way it was written, it was not going to be sustainable. And that's something we see all over the state, is people love smaller class sizes. But what they recognize is smaller class sizes. The way schools are funded in the state of Colorado, smaller class sizes are very, very, very difficult to pull off because they're so expensive. And it's staff where that expense comes from. And I think we'd all be advocates of smaller classrooms. We know what the benefit to that is. But at the end of the day, we also have to be able to keep the lights on in the building and put the heat on. And the air conditioning, which seems to be working really well in this room right now. So with that, we do have a motion. We do have a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Diagon, would you please pull the board?
Johnson? Nathan Casano?
Yes.
Amy Lester? Yes. Michael Whale?
Yes. We're still in special business. Our next item is the approval of the 25-26 salary schedules. Is that going to Mr. Everest?
Thank you, President Wales. Yes, so
Okay, I think it might be working. Yeah,
Okay, I think I got it.
it is. It's working. Because it definitely. Yep, looks like it's working. So we're back. We just had a little audio glitch there. So,
You did have a motion in a second.
so we do. So yeah, we're on special business item B, the approval of the 25-26 salary schedules. We do have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I was gonna get it.
We're on repeat.
So did we get on the audio?
Yeah.
Part where we said
We love our teachers.
we love our teachers and we did fight for them?
Yeah, I mean, we still, if we want to reiterate all that.
I mean, we did, we offer our teachers to hire basically when they come into the district. But we thought all of that would help the CEO in making us do that. We wanted to do that.
And I just added that it was also not just for new teachers, but for experienced teachers that have been in the district a long time. Respected and honored through increase as well. So.
And then Monica did.
I did the love.
Yes. She's up.
We do. We respect our teachers. They are the nucleus of our school district. So that was always the intention, was to figure out a way to negotiate into a fair way to do a salary increase. And I'm proud of the work that has been done on that behalf.
Okay, any other discussion or comments? Okay, we do have a motion and a second. Ms. Diagana, will you hold board?
Monica Johnson,
Yes.
Nate Sisano,
Yes.
Amy Musgrave,
Yes.
Michael Wales.
Yes. Our next item of business is the approval of the June supplemental budget for 2024-25.
Thank you, President Wales. We do need to do a supplemental budget for June for the current school year. We need to adjust the budgets for the grants fund and the student activity fund. Both of them are in need of minor housekeeping corrections. So for the grants fund, throughout the year, the budget in the grants fund is adjusted as the district receives new grants or the district has the allocations of its existing grants change, either up or down. District administration periodically requests board action to correct the budget for the grants fund. For this time, overall the grants funds and revenue, Overall, the grant fund's revenues and expenditures were lowered by $21,424. We gained a $25,000 Colorado Education Initiative grant, and it was reduced by 46. And the bully prevention grant was reduced by $46,424 based off of the allocation here. For our student activities fund, this was actually a transcription error that I had made in the January supplemental bid. I incorrectly had the beginning fund balance of the student activities fund at $814,907. That number was it's on our balance sheet. It's just not the number I was going for. I was going for the number above that. That was the total liabilities and fund balance number. The correct number is $760,297. This error caused the board to appropriate $54,607 more than the fund had available. The revised appropriation resolution corrects this error. And again, district administration is seeking approval of the June supplemental budget for the 24-25 school year. This concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions?
So I guess the only question I have really is just, I think it's just accounting, but we appropriated it because we used the incorrect number. We didn't actually spend that $54,000.
This change for the student activity fund, the revenue number and the expenditure number stay the same. It was just the beginning number, which affects the appropriation number. So I mean, we were never going to go ahead and just spend for $54,000.
Just really clear.
Yes. It was a transcription error. I picked the wrong number off the balance sheet.
As I always say, I never make mistakes, just technical miscalculations.
There you
go. So this is another one of those fun ones.
I'll tackle it. Yeah. Be it resolved by the Board of Education of Weld County School District, RE5J School District in Weld and Larimer counties, that the amount shown in the following schedule be appropriated to each fund as specified in the supplemental budget for the ensuing fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2025.
We have a motion by Director Johnson, a second by Vice President Sassano to adopt the resolution adopting the supplemental budget for July 1, 2024, ending June 30th, 25. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Diagana.
Monica Johnson,
Yes.
Nick Fasano,
Yes.
Amy Musgrave,
Yes.
Michael Williams.
Yes. Our next item is the state interest-free cash flow loan program for 25-26. Mr. Everest.
Thank you, President Wales. And this is something that is most likely very familiar to the board because we do this every year. Colorado school districts can participate in the state interest-free loan program to help smooth out cash flow timing. Once again, the state loan is completely interest-free to our district. State loan is not long-term debt. We have to repay this loan this time around by June 25th, 2026. State loan is not an indication of financial problems. Really, the only thing that our state loan would indicate is just a timing mismatch between when we receive our local property tax revenue and when our expenditures are. So we receive our local property tax revenue in March, May, and June. Our fiscal year begins in July, the prior July. So we go through 9 months before we start receiving our local property tax portion of our I can just go through these next slides quickly. So again, timing of local property tax receipts, increased expenditures in our budget for 25-26, and the mix between state and local funding per district. We've already kind of talked about the timing for local property tax receipts. Increase in expenditures, we just discussed, the increase in the salary schedule, the approval of the proposed budget for 25-26. Salaries and benefits for staff are around 80% of our general fund budget. We pay those every single month. So I have 9 months of salary benefit payments before we would start receiving our local property tax revenue. And then just the mix between our local share and our state share from our total program funding. For the current year, 24-25, we're at about 65% local share funding, 35% state share funding. And actually, I saw something as I was filling out the application for next year. This year, our local funding, 75% of that occurred in May.
Wow.
So 1 month, we get 3/4 of our local
share. Wow.
So, there's, and 58% of our local, 65% of our total program funding comes from local share. So, there's a significant mismatch between when the cash comes in and when the cash goes out throughout the year. For the current, next school year, 25-26, I'm currently estimating about 58%. Our mix will be about 58% local share and about 42% state share. So as our assessed valuation in our district comes down, really through the oil and gas, the wells, depleting that value from the assessed valuation. We're coming, it's coming back down, but we're still, 58% local share funding is a lot. Discussion of the borrowing amount. District administration is asking for a borrowing limit of $20 million for next fiscal year. One thing that's important to note with this state loan program is that the program isn't set up like a credit card is, where you make a payment that reduces the amount you have outstanding, that increases your credit limit on your credit card. The state loan program is not like that. The $20 million, every time the district does a draw from the state loan program, that number ratchets up. In March, we essentially need to pay all of our local property tax receipts to the state as a part of this program. So around March 10th, we pay around $3.5 million back to the state against the loan. That doesn't impact the amount that we borrowed. But then we need to turn around, and around March 17th, we need to go ahead and borrow that $3.5 million back from the program just to keep our operations going. So it's, $20 million is a very large number, but that kind of masks what actually is happening with how much the district actually has outstanding at any one time. Requested board action. District administration is requesting approval for authorization to borrow up to $20 million, which incidentally is the amount that we had for the current year for the state loan program. Was the $20 million. The actual need, based off of the spreadsheet that we need to fill out in order, to apply for the program, is projected to be about $16.7 million currently. And with the program, the best practice is to ask for between 20 and 30% more than what the projection is, just to give yourself a cushion, just to hopefully not have to constantly have to come back to the board asking for increases. And last thing, the actual amount borrowed through the program is based on the demonstrated need based off of the loan program report. So this concludes this presentation, and I can answer any questions the board may have.
Do you understand this?
I don't know.
This seems like a really complicated way to have to do things every year, and I'm just not anything what you were doing, but gets frustrating to me every year. And I know it's process. I know it is.
I think fundamentally the problem is that a long time ago, back when I was in K-12 school, district's fiscal years was
Why does the state just front the money to every district who needs it and just take the receipts out of which essentially is what they do, but the fact that you have to make draws every month, that seems like that adds a little overhead to the whole issue. Are we having an audio problem again? Because
The ledge is, it looks like it's still working on our end though.
it is, the light is still showing, but it did make a little noise just a second ago.
But it is. Say something?
Something? I'm saying something.
just back.
All right.
Okay, I have just a general question. My questions are probably not all that intelligent when I ask you, Michael, so I apologize. But for the local shares, who actually determines that percentage, and how does that percentage get determined?
So that is actually a very excellent question, because it's a rather convoluted process that has gone through to determine that. Just in kind of a brief nutshell, so the majority of our funding is our total program funding. So that is determined by the funding formula that the state currently uses. So what happens is that, all of the district's characteristics, all the different things that are taken into account, all of that is put into the model. And then, there's an estimate for the number of students that the district is going to end up with for that year. And so then you come up with a total program funding number. And so, like if we look here, so if it's, if the total program funding was $1, let's say to keep the math simple. So for this current year, we're estimating that 58 cents of that will come from local share, 42% comes from state. Now the local share is determined by the mill levy. So just kind of the state share is just kind of that's what gets us to 100% of our total program funding. What determines the 58% is based off of our general mill levy. So that is set at, and I'm blanking on how much it is at this particular moment.
We'll know in December.
It's around 34, 35 mils. So that money, so whatever based off of our assessed valuation, the tax base the district has, you apply the mill levy to the tax base, and then you come up with the 58 cents that we would get. And then so the 42 cents is what the state essentially backfills for us. Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that does help. Yeah. Your job is complicated.
It's interesting.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, guess what? We have another.
I will move to approve the resolution authorizing the participation by the district in the state treasurer's interest-free loan program for Colorado schools, and borrowing under such program in an aggregated principal amount up to $20 million, establishing the terms and provisions of loans to the district pursuant to such program, providing for the payment of and security for such loans, and authorizing the execution, delivery, and acceptance of documents in connection with the loans.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Vice President Sassano, a second by Director Johnson to approve the resolution authorizing participation by the district in the state treasurer's interest-free loan program for the principal amount of $20 million. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Diagon.
Monica Johnson,
Yes.
Nick Sassano,
Yes.
Amy Musgrave, Michael Whale.
Yes. We'll move on to our next item, bus lease resolution.
Last one?
Not quite.
Well, for me.
Oh,
He's gonna walk out.
okay. Mr. Everest.
Thank you, President Wales. Bus leasing for the school district. In February, Board of Education was presented with the option to use leasing to assist in the purchasing of needed replacement buses for our district. District administration has worked with First National Bank to lease 4 buses in July of 2025, next month, for operation during the 25-26 school year. Draft lease documents are available for review on Board Docs. Lease documents are currently in legal review and will be available early next week should the board choose to adopt them. This next slide was taken from the leasing documents, and it just basically shows the terms and the repayment schedule for the leasing. And when I say leasing, that's kind of a magic word for Tabor. It's really the financing that we're going through for this. We won't, at the end of the 5 years, we don't get the buses back. The buses will be ours. So. So requested board action, district administration requests Board of Education approval to enter a proposed leasing agreement to purchase 4 buses for the 25-26 school year. This concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions the board may have.
Questions? This is part of the plan that we saw back in February to replace a certain number every year.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so we're not gonna end up with 5 years from now, we have to buy, 10 buses or whatever it was.
Well, you'll need to talk to Mr. Long, but that's not my, I'm not anticipating.
For that accident free mile program.
These 4 buses will be new, they'll replace 4 older buses. Are we gonna get rid of those 4 older buses? Are we keeping those to?
No, we won't get rid of 4. I have 2 that we had asked to sell earlier on the year. Those 2 are going. I have 1 right now that is questionable. We're looking at it. There's some rust issues that kind of popped up, but the goal is to just get rid of the 2 and add 2 to the fleet. So it'll help us out. I know this year we've had lots of discussions, Superintendent Nielsen, the shortage of buses when they're broken down. I think we had 1 day that we had to drop a route and we were able to make it work. We combined them, but it's not exactly feasible. It puts the driver's stress level way higher. It packs those buses to capacity, and usually it makes another stop somewhere have to wait in inclement weather. It's not for the students, so it's always nice to have that pool of fleet vehicles. So I didn't didn't want to get rid of a lot of vehicles, only 2, just because I didn't want to put the money into preparing those vehicles to become certifiable to transport those students. So 2 is out for, so, yeah.
That will be on a regular cycle of a few every year, or every other year, I think it was. I don't remember exactly what it said.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Long and I have worked together to kind of come up with a replacement schedule, which we went over in February, just kind of what we're projecting now.
JJ, do you know off the top of your head how many vehicles are in our fleet?
Buses, I have roughly 30. Vans, I believe, including, you want to talk IT, shop vehicle, probably 15, about 45 total. And I've started cataloging the utility vehicles as well. So like, we have a UTV, high school has 2 golf carts, UTV. We've started the repairs for Chad when he's panicking about graduation, not having a golf cart to use. Yeah, so we started doing all that. Or it was Chad go find somebody to fix it. But since we've owned them, we got one this year when we moved into the new facilities. We kind of, I don't know, just grandfathered to take care of Chad's too. So anything with wheels on it other than the motors is pretty much coming to us. So trailers, everything. So.
See, that's crazy because when I was a kid, buses, we didn't have numbers on the buses, they were colored. So we had colors for our buses. So now you've got like that 50-pack Crayola that you have to like,
We
for a little kindergarten, come on, cornflower blue, and I don't know what that is.
We have special squares, colored squares, that we even have because we're growing. It's, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
So, when we started doing this, we started having multiple colors elementary, and we figure out real fast. That confuses the elementary kids, so we made that. So now we've added brown, teal, and gray. So we've got a bunch of different colors. I think it's one of the new ones we just added this year. So.
In fact, I don't know if for a long time they used to be there at Ledford. They painted circles.
Yeah, Elwell still paints the buses, so does Pine Ridge.
Okay.
MES doesn't really because of the fact that it's on the sidewalk there.
Right.
I think for a while they're posting little sticks with buses on them for kids. But yeah, it's usually.
Yeah, I remember every year there was a fresh, big, giant circle with your bus color on it.
Sounds like you might need a facility to work on those vehicles.
I would love a facility.
A proper facility.
You know how much money we would save in repairs?
I have an idea.
Ask this guy. Say the R word. We'll just have that talk Monday, Friday.
Well, we talk about it.
We talk about it a lot. Yeah.
It seems like whenever I do an expenditure report, we talk about it.
Okay, is this a good time to shamelessly plug, do we still need transportation drivers for the next school year?
I lost 3 this year. 1 retired, 2 jumped ship and joined the elementary schools. Both are parents in the district, and that worked out better for them. So we didn't really lose them. We just kind of transferred them. So I have 1 driver in training right now, actually 2 technically. Waiting for the 1 driver. They have to transfer their license from Nebraska. They're moved from Nebraska. I'm actively recruiting one. It's coming from Thompson now. I'm pretty sure that they're going to come aboard because they're not over there. And I've already recruited 1 from Windsor. So word has it, Area 5J is the place to be if you want to be a bus driver. I think I don't have to credit myself, I credit the team, especially Janice. She's an amazing trainer. But we have recruited now 5 from other districts. So right now I'm just short 1 in the next year. Well, 2 van drivers, but we haven't recruited van drivers because I've got a huge pile, but I can't offer them a job now and with nothing to do, so we wait till about August. It only takes me about a week and a half to train for that.
So we'll shamelessly plug in August. Okay, that works out.
Yes, if you don't help me out, please.
I don't want to drag this too far out, but are you getting applications right now?
Yes, I got one just today.
Okay, good, because somebody in the community came to me and said that they had applied, but they weren't sure if their application actually went through because the website kind of indicated that it,
We've had a few of that. Do you know the name?
I do, and we can talk about it.
Let me know because I just looked at it yesterday and, we called and contacted that person, so.
Okay.
We're usually pretty on it. We're watching, especially for CDL drivers, because, there's not many applicants for those. And when we get one or we hear somebody, we pretty much actively recruit. So
Okay.
we're
Yeah.
not shameless to call them up before they apply.
Hang out for one more item, and then we can talk before we move on to. Any other questions, any other comments?
My turn to read. Okay. All right, I'll move to approve the resolution authorizing the lease purchase financing for the purpose of financing the acquisition of school buses, approving an equipment lease purchase agreement, and any additional transaction documents needed to complete the financing, and providing parameters in connection with the financing.
Sorry. We have a motion by Director Musgrave, a second by Vice President Sassano, to approve the resolution authorizing the lease purchase financing and associated documents. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Diagana?
Johnson,
Yes.
Solano,
Yes.
Amy Musgrave. Yes. Michael Barrett.
Yes.
Thank you.
And they're already here. Well, they're
not here.
No, they came in early. We've had a really great working relationship with Colorado West. Terry, my predecessor, introduced me to him. That relation is carried on with us. And when we were talking about it, he told me, if you can get it approved, we can get them here by July. And we got them before the big districts ordered all theirs. They have been here at Colorado West now for 3 weeks.
So they're not here, but they're
They're
in
not here in
Colorado.
our lot, but they're at Colorado West getting their final touches. So when July 1st comes, instead of like last year when I had to wait till September to get them, they will be here and ready for us for October or August.
So who gets to the fancy new ones?
I take bribes.
It's a great policy.
Can't get me.
I just usually, I look at the drivers and I look at the bus and I'm like, that one costs a lot. That's gonna sit on the side. So that's usually how we pick.
Yeah.
I do have drivers come to me.
Okay, we'll move on to our next item of special business. That's the designation of the election official and notification to Larimer and Weld counties for the notice of election. Ms. Diagana, are you going to tell us why we should hire you as our election official?
You don't have anyone else, but. And I'll do a great job. I'll do a great job.
I know you will. Scott, do you?
I don't have anything to say other than I think Jessica's the right person to do it for us.
Do you want to explain what all we're looking at here?
So
Just
the
for the record.
first document is not the body. Did you click on Leslie?
Yes, you did.
Did we talk about me now, Michael?
I don't know why we would.
So this first document, that's Weld RE5J resolution. It calls out myself as the designated election official, but also calls out for canceling the election and what would happen if people run unopposed and stuff like that. So that's an internal resolution. The second of that is the oath that I'm going to do a good job and run a transparent process and treat all candidates fairly. And then the other document that's attached is the memo to Weld County and Larimer counties. Those are the two counties sit in. So we have to coordinate with both of them, mostly with Weld County, about 18 houses for Weld County.
Larimer.
And so this will just kick off the process for us to get coordinated and be ready to go with the counties. I work off of the campaign finance schedule, and I also work off of the Larimer County and Weld County clerks. So I've got two set of deadlines that kind of run next to each other. And it's a very laid out process, about 100 days before, not more than 90 days before, and I calculate all of that out and make sure that we're ready to go.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Diagana?
Are you sure that you want to do that? You don't.
No, I think it's a great process.
You've done a good job with it.
You ready?
Yeah.
I move that the Board of Education designate Jessica Diagana as the local designated election official and authorize her to perform all tasks as set forth in the county's intergovernmental agreements for the district, and to publish one-time and post notice of the mail ballot coordinated election in the office of the DEO, as well as Larimer and Weld County's notice of election.
I'll second.
We have one by Vice President Sassano, a second by Director Johnson, to name Jessica Diagana as the local designated election official, DEO, and authorize her to perform tasks set forth in the county's intergovernmental agreements for the district, and to publish one-time and notice of the mail ballot coordinated election for both Larimer and Weld counties. Any further discussion? I couldn't summarize that one. I was having to read the
Could've just
dang
made the
thing.
motion.
Hearing none, Ms. Diagana.
Monica Johnson,
Enthusiastic, yes.
James Solano,
Yes.
Amy Musgrave, yes. Michael Webb.
Yes. That concludes all our special business. We do not have any new business. We have any citizen comments on general topics, do we? I think she's checking.
No, sir.
Okay. We do need to go into an executive session. I gotta make sure I get this one right, because I had to pull this from action. Pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-4024E, for the purpose of discussing and determining positions concerning matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators specifically with respect to the terms of the superintendent's employment contract. The superintendent will not be present for this executive session. And so I entertain a motion for that.
So,
And a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice President Sassano, a second by Director Johnson to enter into executive session as previously stated. We will, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Can we use the back room? That'd probably just be the easiest thing, wouldn't it? Sure. Okay, so we'll go ahead and recess our public session, and we will come back because we do have one item following the executive session. Okay. So I don't want to mess with your thing here and mess it up, so.
Or do I push it wrong? Okay.
Yeah, I think you're good. It's 8:37. We'll reconvene the regular session or special meeting session, whatever, the public session, I think is the correct term. We do have one item, further actionable item, and that is the approval of the 2025-26 superintendent's contract and amendment. We really can't do a whole lot of discussion about that, but are there any questions or discussion in public? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Everybody's looking at me. I will move to approve the amended version of the superintendent's contract. Is that appropriate?
Yeah.
Okay. No, because we only have.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice President Sassano, a second by Director Johnson to approve the amendment to the 25-26 superintendent's contract. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Diagana.
Anna Johnson.
Yes.
Nate Sassano.
Yes.
Amy Musgrave. Cole Vance.
Yes. Congratulations, Mr. Nielsen. You're with us for another year. We appreciate all the work that you've done, taking us to the next level. So. Amen. With that, do we have any other items deemed necessary by the board?